We're building out to 42 million pounds now. My operations used to be in Milwaukee, and I had a recycling facility in Eagan that would bring carpet in. But, you know, with the price of oil and the changes in the industry, I had to close my entire operations. California, of course, adopted some EPR legislation that allows a robust recycling community to exist. I can tell you from experience doing this for about 10 years that about 75% of the recyclers around the United States have closed. We do have a small one, Brotex, that is struggling along, but you know, is diverting a small amount here. And I can tell you that with a bill like this, they would greatly increase their operations. Having run a significant carpet recycling operation in the Midwest, painfully having to move it out to California, I'm uniquely aware of the challenges and the opportunities that we have here. Like any worthwhile endeavors, this program in California had its challenges. It was the first one ever done. There was no playbook by which to figure it out. So it took time for them to develop their best practices that you kind of see today. That being said, to make this brief, the 7 years and the investments that have gone out in the California one have allowed the technologies to change radically, to be developed where it can work elsewhere, the markets for the products, including the plant in Mankato that has a very revolutionary product, and there are several others that allow it to happen on a far more national level, and also how to overcome the logistical challenges that are involved. You know, Minnesota's always been a hardworking and innovative state, and I think that this issue of landfilled recyclable plastics is, you know, we talked a little bit about this issue of plastics is only just beginning. We are becoming such a society of this. With the EPR program somewhat similar to the California, I'm confident that we would build here as Circular Polymers. Several others would build plants. Brotex would grow dramatically, and we would be able to divert one of the largest reusable items from landfill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this testifier? Representative Hinsman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lots of carpeting going into landfills, I'm assuming, in Minnesota, so this is probably a really big issue statewide. I'm glad Representative Hansen's talking about this. I'm not entirely sure this is the way to do it, but I think that we definitely need to be talking about it. And questions I have start with how many states are already carrying legislation or passed legislation like this? Maybe you could elaborate on what sort of consumers can expect in terms of cost increases to products. And then also I have another question maybe Representative Hansen could address. I'm dealing with a mattress recycler who's literally looking at having to move his operation to another state because MPCA doesn't know how to handle some of the waste that is created, or the potential for some of the challenges MPCA may find in terms of our current statute relative to this product being recycled. There's a lot there, but if we could cover those things, that'd be great.
Maybe starting with the mattress one, you know, because I deal with the mattress recyclers on the California side as well, and that's a real tough business. You know, mattresses are so dissimilar in how they're constructed. Residential carpet is almost all the same. You know, it has this polypropylene backing. About half the weight of it is limestone rock, and then it has a carpet fiber, either PET or nylon. And that's what we're recovering. You know, it goes into automotive products. The radiator of your car or the shroud would typically be a nylon. The polypropylene would go into pallets, and the PET would go into things like this decking board plant or chemical recycling. The cost side, you know, this is the whole issue of 3 to 4% of what we're throwing into landfills appears to be these flooring goods. And what are we going to do as a society? Are we going to just continue to do that, make new virgin things, or are we going to have some type of a situation where these recycled goods can compete with virgin goods? Plastic is such a cheap commodity with all the fracking we have going on in the United States that virgin plastic is so cheap, you really have to have a small subsidy on, you know, the recycled products in order to compete. California, you know, it's around 4 to 6 cents per square foot. There's talk about deselection, these kind of things. That's much more we're just going to LVT and laminate goods in our houses more than carpeting is the primary issue there.
Representative Heinzman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So maybe Representative Hansen could take this one. I'm also, I guess what I was specifically referring to at MPCA is has MPCA been brought in, and what kind of other issues are they going to be looking at relative to this product being recycled? If they haven't, that's okay. I'm just curious if you have heard from them.
Chair Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Heinzman. Just to be clear, it's not an initiative of the Pollution Control Agency, but we've had extensive discussions, and I know Mr. Kudelka is here. It was an initiative in 2013, and it came very close to becoming law. And so some of that background information, so we have the information from 13, and then we have what's happened since, and we see more material going into landfills, and we can get that information from PCA for you. I think Mr. Kudelka's here, but I wanted to make sure that you were able to catch your flight. Thank you.
Representative Fabian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fiore, how many collection sites do you have in California?
Fiore?
I have around 40 to 50 of my own, and then there are 2 or 3 other collectors that collect and I buy product from them. Similar to what Brotex does. They've got about 120, 140 around Minnesota right now.
Representative Fabian?
Thank you,
That's
Madam
it?
Chair. I don't think I have any more questions for Mr. Fiore, so I'll let anybody else ask, and then we can come back.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Representative Fiore? Representative Becker?
Thank you, Chair. So California is a big state.
Yep.
So in some of the really less populated area, there's huge amount of transportation costs and so forth. So what's the model in California for that?
Absolutely. It's getting innovative
Fiore?
with it. There's a mandate in that law for convenient collections for all. Everybody wants to just collect in Minneapolis because it's cheapest to get. There's a small subsidy that is given to help with the transportation costs of it, but typically, material is stored on site in a covered area, and you'll find a backhaul with a carrier or a modular system, where it will be a sea container or some palletized type system to get it back to a processing plant, because you've got to be cost competitive with the current cost of landfills, or it just gets out of control.
One more follow-up.
Representative Becker?
So right now, technically speaking, in California, it is illegal to throw carpet away?
No, not illegal. There is a fee up front, which goes into a fund that subsidizes the recycling of it. But as recyclers, it is up to us to go out and work with the local stores to, replace going to landfill. Typically, you've got to be about 33% cheaper than what the store is currently paying to landfill their carpet in order to even convince them to do it. That's the typical model.
One more follow-up.
Representative Becker?
So I'm assuming sometimes you get some really, when people, I don't see people storing this type of carpet in a nice dry area. You're getting some really heavy, wet, stinky carpet that also adds for costs of recycling. I would assume so. I don't think you get something nice. Is that correct?
That is, I don't know how I got into this business some days, but yeah, so, you'll try and work with them to make sure it's covered and not wet. But I would say probably about 97% of what we bring in, we're able to recover. About 3% is just so bad.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Fiore? All right. Thank you. Safe flights. And Representative Hansen, if you wanted to go back to the beginning to present your bill.
Thank you. So House File 2267 requires carpet manufacturers selling their product to individually or collectively organize, implement, and finance a program to collect and recycle used carpet. This product stewardship model is currently being used for electronic waste and used paint. I think Mr. Fiore gave some good examples of how we could develop the program, making sure that there is access for all. So it says carpet manufacturers must submit a plan to the PCA before March 20th, 2021 that contains certification that All discarded carpet, regardless of manufacturer, will be collected. A description of how, without the imposition of end-of-life fees, the collection, transportation, and recycling processes will operate. A proposed stewardship assessment to be placed on all carpet sold in the state, reviewed by an independent auditor to pay for the cost of the program. 5-year performance goals and estimates of the proportion of discarded carpet that will be recycled each year, and carpet design changes that may reduce its toxicity, reduce water and energy use to manufacture carpet, and increase recyclability. And I know there are several other testifiers, if we could have them. In addition, there are 2 letters in your packet, one from Hennepin County and one from the Product Stewardship Institute.
Hello, please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Victoria Reinhardt. I'm on the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, and I am here speaking actually from a national level, a local level, because I'm Vice Chair of the Environment, Energy, and Land Use Committee for the National Association of Counties, and work at the local level and at the regional level and at the state level with our Association of Minnesota Counties. So I think one of the things, Mr. Fiore did such a great job of explaining how this works, and it was very interesting to hear because he's actually in the industry. I'm here as really a local government person. In the metropolitan area, we have a recycling goal of, I think it's 75% by 2030. And so we need to do a lot more than we have done in the past, and we need to really look at what are we trying to do for the environment for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Approximately 135 tons per year of carpet are generated in Minnesota. Of that, 100,000 is sent to land disposal, 29,000 tons per year are combusted in waste-to-energy facilities, and only 6,000 tons per year are collected for recycling. The estimated amount per capita of tons that are discarded every year is 30 to 40 pounds per capita. And again, that's every year. We need to, as far as the recycling goals, California was mentioned, and when they established their recycling goals for carpet, they established a goal in 2017 of 24% recovery by 2020. And right now they have a 14% rate. And when you think about that, again, we're less than 5% right now. And we've been working for many years voluntarily on this issue, 20-plus years, and yet our state recycling and recovery goal is still in the single digits with the 2 facilities, Brotex and the Mankato facility. And we just, it keeps getting, there's more and more, basically. It's not getting any better, it's getting worse as far as the percentage that is being recycled. There are a number of benefits that I want to talk about very briefly. Job benefits. If we recovered 50% of discarded carpet, 65,000 tons per year, that would support an estimated 195 direct jobs and up to 650 indirect jobs. And the study that has been done, through California, but also through the TELUS Sound Resource Management Study, says that, and it's consistent with proprietary industry estimates, of 10 direct jobs and 10 indirect jobs associated with each recovered 1,000 tons. So again, this is a job producer. The materials recovery benefit, with our goal in the Twin Cities of having 75% by 2030, and knowing that the yield on recovered carpet is between 45 and 60%, we can do a lot with this. Even though it's a small percentage of the actual waste stream, this is important, and it's something that we really need to do for the recovered fiber, the polyresin for post-consumer content products, including new carpet and similar products. And again, Mr. Fiore did a great job of explaining that. It conserves landfill space. It prevents operational problems in waste processing and incineration that result from carpet. And obviously, we've all heard about the markets and China's recent refusal to accept and process American waste plastic waste. So we need to improve the recyclability of the products and take responsibility for the waste that is created, the carpet manufacturers I'm referring to, greenhouse gas benefits. And this was something that was new to me when I first looked at it, because I'm not as familiar with the waste reduction model or the WARM forecasts for Minnesota, but would, if we take and recycle, we would reduce greenhouse gases by 333,763 metric tons of CO2 if all the carpet generated were recycled. Now, I know that we're not going to get to 100%, but still. That is the equivalent of 71,000 passenger miles driven for 1 year, or 58,000 homes electrical consumption for 1 year, and finally, 365 million pounds of coal. So the greenhouse gas benefit of this is very significant. Market development framework and support. The manufacturer's efforts support additional training and outreach for flooring contractors and professionals. And the assessment support end market processors fulfill goals of land diversion, post-consumer content and products, and greenhouse gas savings. Finally, the stewardship program financing. I think it's important to note that the product stewardship programs can be and have been in other states and in Minnesota supported by stewardship fees assessed at the point of sale or by fully internalizing these costs. And I think it's important to note for local governments especially, these costs are here today. They are mostly being paid for not by the manufacturers, but by local governments because of our recycling goals, and or whether it's going to a landfill or a waste-to-energy facility. Those are generally, especially the recycling goals, are paid for by local taxpayers. And so it's not as if we're creating a cost. The cost is already there, and we feel that it's important that the manufacturers and the extended producer responsibility, as we've referred to as EPR, is in place to deal with that. So with that, I will end my comments and stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Commissioner Reinhardt? Seeing none, are there other folks in the audience who would like to testify for or against the bill? Good evening. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Molly Peterson, and I'm testifying on behalf of Fiber Commercial Technologies, a manufacturing company located in Mankato. Fiber Commercial Technologies uses recycled carpet fiber from landfill-destined post-consumer carpet waste streams to manufacture outdoor building materials. This is a patented process developed by the founders of the Fiberon Composite Decking Company, an industry leader in the outdoor living category of the composite decking industry. The company has invested $30 million in the Mankato plant site and business in the last 30 months. The process utilizes carpet fiber liberated from landfill-bound carpet discards, compresses them to create a plywood-like sheet of material that is further finished into building products. The plant at capacity will consume 60 million pounds of carpet fiber, or 110 million pounds of carpet discard feedstock, which is diverted from the landfill. This represents an estimated 66% of the annual total collectible waste stream of carpet discard in the state of Minnesota. The company currently sources its fiber from California, where a developed and operating stewardship program provides predictable financial support to recycling efforts creating diversion from the landfills. Thanks to this program, the recycling rate for carpet in California is 15 to 16% and estimated to grow to 24% over the upcoming few years. By contrast, the carpet recycling rate in Minnesota is currently estimated at under 2% and is not projected to increase. Carpet represents 3 to 4% of the volume of waste in U.S. landfills, some 4 billion pounds per year. It is one of the largest commodities by weight to end up in landfills. It proposes a difficult landfill problem and complex recycling that requires stewardship programs to permit commercialization of permanent recycling businesses. This problem needs a solution, and states have begun the effort to create stewardship programs with an economic mechanism to reduce the landfilling of carpet waste. Minnesota, with Fiber Commercial Technologies, has an opportunity to completely alter the current waste stream of carpet entering its landfills. Companies like FCT can provide the infrastructure to address the issue, provide jobs, and create a more sustainable economy. We urge the state of Minnesota to create and adopt long-term, properly structured legislation which creates a sustainable stewardship organization and funding mechanism. We look forward to working with Representative Hansen, with legislators, the Pollution Control Agency, and stakeholders on this important issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Representative Fabian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, is it Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Okay, so take me back to the very beginning of your testimony, and you said that the technology that you're using or the techniques that you're using, I don't know, they're patented, they're something secret? Help me out. Repeat that for me, please.
Ms. Peterson?
Sure. I don't know if it's secret, but it's a patented process, and the owners of Fiber on Composite Decking Company, they patented this process to take the fibers and turn them into building materials.
Okay. I'll come back. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Ms. Peterson? Thank you very much. And there are other testifiers in the audience. Hello, and please introduce yourself for the record.
Excuse me. Good evening, Chair, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Representative Hansen. My name is Lisa Furnett, and I represent the Carpet and Rug Institute. On behalf of the Carpet and Rug Institute, I'm here to oppose House File 2300, the Carpet Stewardship Program. This bill makes an assumption that by simply passing legislation mandating carpet product stewardship programs, you can increase the recycling rate and create end markets. What it does not do is take into account the unique nature of carpet as material, both various types, for example, nylon, nylon 6, and PET, and the construction of carpet. The obstacles to collecting and recycling of these materials, the different processes it takes to disassemble and recycle the different types of carpet for recycling, and the different recycled materials, each with their own unique end markets. The language in this bill attempts to mirror language that was passed by California several years ago. Since California passed its legislation, no other state has passed a carpet stewardship program, a program that has taken over 8 years to get off the ground and is still working on issues like transporting carpet from rural areas to facilities that recycle. The Carpet America recovery effort estimates that collection costs for rural areas are 3 times that of the collection in urban areas. And more importantly, their 2 longest running recyclers have suspended their operations. The PCA in the recent testimony says that 135,000 tons of carpet is being collected each year, with 6,000 tons collected by the only carpet recycler in Minnesota, Brotex. But those raw numbers distort the real world of carpet recycling. The 135,000 tons, when you look at the numbers compiled by the PCA, consists of both carpet and textiles. And carpet is a combination of carpet and carpet padding. The city of Minneapolis, in its 2015 SORT report, studied the effects of its curbside recycling program. The report states, the recycling rates assume that the recyclable and compostable items are 100% clean and free of contamination when they're placed for curbside collection, and also assumes that the city and the recycling contractors will have sustainable end markets for all of these commodities. The report also found that even with these assumptions, which would rarely apply outside Minneapolis, maximum achievable capture rate for carpet and padding is only 10%. This brings me to the Brotex website, which lists 14 requirements for accepting post-consumer carpet and padding for recycling. I won't go through all of them, but I'm happy to provide the whole list to anyone who would like it. Here are a few examples of the requirements for accepting carpet. It must be rolled residential carpet. Commercial carpet is accepted only with prior approval. No carpet, tile, or other rigid flooring is allowed. No wet glue, debris, refuse, rocks, or caked mud. Very rarely will you find carpet come in that's not contaminated. This list demonstrates the difficulty of sending post-consumer carpet to recycling. Interestingly enough, the bill requires the carpet tile must be recycled, and Brotec's list does not accept this product, showing that because there is a recycler, doesn't mean that you can recycle every ton of recyclable products. The proposed funding for the program would be solely the responsibility of the manufacturers. As stated in the bill, costs would be covered by products, fees, or taxes. Counties, cities, and local governments would not absorb this cost. It would be passed down to the taxpayers. In addition, consumers would see this increased cost on a daily basis, as firms would be forced to shift costs onto consumers to account for the mandate, this effectively becoming a hidden tax. I'd like to circle back real quickly before I close to the California Carpet Stewardship Program. Based on testimony by Bob Peoples, after 8 years, and this was in the previous testimony last week, after 8 years and over $45 million in subsidies and an assessment fee that has grown 700%, California is still trying to figure out how to collect and recycle carpet. From 2014 to 2018, recycled output was 212 million pounds, and the cost was $15 million. The end market isn't there for recycled carpet. As an FYI, California works because it is heavily subsidized. Carpet and Rug Institute looks forward to working with Representative Hansen, the MPCA, counties, and other stakeholders on how to best manage carpet at the end of its useful life. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Frenette? Representative Heinzman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to put it out there, if you could get that list out to members somehow soon. I have a couple of requests already.
Oh, absolutely. I'll email it to you, Madam Chair. Representative Heinzman, I'll email it to everyone.
Thank you. We have another testifier. And please introduce yourself for the record.
Madam Chair, good evening. My name is Bruce Newstead. With the Minnesota Retailers Association, I present retailers small, mid-sized, and large across the state, including some that sell carpet, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment on Chair Hansen's bill today. In its current form, it's difficult, if not impossible, for retailers to support this approach to carpet stewardship. While much of the responsibility rests with manufacturers, we're concerned with its impact on Minnesota's consumers and retailers. In the interest of time, I keep my comments brief, but I do want to point out just a few things real quick. First, the bill provides little protection and much liability for retailers that sell carpet. Second, as the fees are not defined, we're concerned about this ambiguity. As you might expect, that concern centers around surrounding states and the fact that Minnesota will be the only state in our area to have some sort of fee. The reality is some consumers will figure out a way to avoid purchasing carpet in Minnesota, resulting in economic wins for retailers in neighboring states and losses here in Minnesota. And third, we've been intrigued by the analogy in past committees with the analogy of paint care stewardship program. Members of the committee, this proposal is much different than paint care. And while retailers were concerned about paint care initially, in fact, maybe still aren't 100% enthusiastic with it, its framework has generally worked. But again, what's being proposed is not a paint care-like program. It's a stewardship program, but it is not a paint care-like program. And finally, retailers are watching closely the manufacturing industry's effort to voluntarily recycle carpet, and we think it's most cost-effective for Minnesota's consumers to let that process continue. Madam Chair, thank you for the time today, and thank you, Chair Hansen, for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you very much, especially for your brevity and your comments. Are there any questions for Mr. Newstead? All right, I believe we have another testifier. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Kirk Kadelka. I'm Assistant Commissioner with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And the agency was mentioned a couple times, so I felt it'd be good to come down here and talk about the bill. We do support the bill and thank the author for the effort here. As mentioned by a number of other testifiers, there are a number of benefits for a carpet product stewardship program, specifically the resources conserved by being able to use the materials that have been used once a second time. This is something that many manufacturing industries are looking to move into in terms of the circular economy. In addition, there's the environmental benefits in terms of reducing the climate change and the greenhouse gas benefits, but also the jobs benefits has been testified here of companies that would pop up in Minnesota to meet the needs here. So a couple of things I just want to highlight. As mentioned earlier, the agency did work on this in 2013, and one of the things looking back at our talking points back then is the issue is not getting any better. In fact, more waste is going into the landfill and the recycling rates is staying the same. So doing the same thing over and over and keep doing it, we would assume we would see the same type of issue. It's only states such as California that has taken the action and moved forward on this have we seen change, where there's a program put in place. A product stewardship model is built so it isn't necessarily just a state-run program, but one that allows for innovation and the private sector to find innovative solutions to disposal and recycling of products. An example is mentioned, not only California showing how this has been done and the previous testifier and explain how in real world circumstances this works in urban and metro areas, but a number of other states are also looking to do this. Illinois, New York, and Minnesota are all states with legislation before us right now because we have seen that success in California because of that investment, because of the product stewardship organization there that has put together a program to pull carpet from landfills, divert it away from there, and put it into better uses. Madam Chair and committee members, if there's, be more than happy to answer any other questions too. I know there were some earlier for PCA.
Yes, Representative Heitzman had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you, I'm glad MPCA came down because I do have questions. You anticipated that. Could you help me understand what some of the difficulties might have been and what, in terms of manufacturers in the permitting process, were there permits issued previously or currently in place for this? I think Brotex is the name of the company. How is that working? And are they working on a permanent permit or a permit that is in sort of, well, you could probably better describe that. I'll let you go for it.
Assistant Commissioner Kudelka.
Madam Chair and committee members, we haven't heard any problems from Brotex in terms of regulatory structure from the agency as we have worked on this. So I don't anticipate that being in this situation either. So that is something that we can work through.
Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So specifically, I was referring to can you describe the permit? Is a permit one that is ongoing, or is it changing from year to year? What's the status of the permit?
Assistant Commissioner Kudelka.
Or,
Madam Chair and committee members, I would have to get back to specifically if there is a solid waste permit. Our solid waste permits more are on the regulation of things that are disposed, landfills, transfer stations, and sometimes recycling facilities. Something has taken it and now is processing it, that second type of processing doesn't necessarily need a solid waste permit from us. So an example are companies that take recycled materials as they come in, say a plastic lumber company. Once they have it and it's already brought to them as recycled material and they're manufacturing turning into something else, it would just be like any other permit they might need for a manufacturing process. But we can double check to make sure if there are any solid waste permits, but I don't believe there are.
Are there other questions for Assistant Commissioner Kudelka? Right. Representative Hansen, any closing remarks?
Ooh.
Oh.
Oh.
Now there's questions. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with regards to the Brotex, I've got some of their information that was updated as of December of 2018. And it says that, well, first of all, there's a drop-off charge in addition to all the other charges. According to the information that I have, there's a drop-off charge for carpet or pad delivered directly to Brotex within the stated specifications. They still do reserve the right to refuse out-of-spec material and adjust the drop-off charge at their discretion. At these sites, you will need to transfer your carpet to the trailers or containers at the site. Transfer assistance is not generally available at the collection sites. The carpet must be dry, no wet carpet or pad. Commercial carpet has to be accepted only with prior approval. Carpet must be in rolls, which prohibits carpet tiles as I kind of read through this. my point for pointing these things out is in rural Minnesota, how are we going to keep carpet dry? Representative Hansen, what's going to be the process for somebody in Hallock or Roseau or Thief River Falls to keep carpet dry, and when can they expect someone to come and pick it up?
Representative Hansen.
Madam Chair and Representative Fabian, that's the beauty with extended producer responsibility. We're asking the industry to figure that out and be creative and problem solve. I've had several questions about Brotex. I've never talked to Brotex, but whatever that company is doing, they're having to do because there isn't extended producer responsibility. They're trying to make it in a market where there's no guaranteed market, so they're being prescriptive. If we were prescriptive in the bill, there would be critique about it being prescriptive rather than providing for the creativity. So extended producer responsibility allows for the entrepreneurs to work this out. I think the testimony we had from California, where there's guidelines to say you want to have access throughout the state, I think we can figure this out. We can't continue in what we're doing right now of filling up our landfills with carpet and everything else. We are drowning in garbage. We have nowhere place to go. So we got to figure this out, and I think we can. We can do this. So we're not being, this is thou shalt do it this way. We're saying, figure it out. Work on this. Work this out. And I think they can.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, to that point, the testifier from, I think it was California, said that the cost of the program is 3 times more expensive in rural California than it is in non-rural, larger areas. So my concern is that the fees and so forth are going to be disproportionately fall on rural Minnesota. And to the point of the landfills, and as I stated in 2013, and I've stated recently in the policy committee, I don't know what sense it makes to haul carpet in from all over the state to bring it down here and then remove, 30% of the content of the carpet and then take what's left and throw it in the landfill. It would seem to me that we need to be more focused on where the carpet is coming from. So those are some of the questions that just kind of roll around in my head, and I don't know if you want to respond to that, Representative Hansen. I'm not really asking you a question, but I'm making some comments, and I'm very concerned about the increased costs at a fairly small carpet installation business being required to keep carpet clean for 6 months or a year and dry, and then having to put more of their revenue into building some sort of a facility.
Chair Hansen.
Madam Chair and Representative Fabian, I think that's what we heard from the California testimony, is that they have multiple drop-off sites. They're working with the producers that are, and the retailers that are there. And so that market, the market forces are going to be involved, but the market has to be responsible because we're saying they need to be responsible. They need to have that responsibility. And the guidelines that we can do as a state is say, we need to make sure there's that access there. Yes, we've got different weather than California, and there's certainly going to be different needs that are out there. But we've worked around that with other programs and other policies, and I think we can figure that out. And that's where we've got a timeline here that goes out for a while. It's not saying immediate, and it's saying we can help figure this out. And I'll be real on it took time to get paint. We heard that. It took time to get the electronics. It's going to take time to do this. But we don't have the time or the ability to continue to do the same thing. It's not working to haul the waste either. And I agree with you. We've got to figure out a way of handling this stuff and reducing waste and figuring out a way to get this recycled rather than putting it in the landfills. We heard testimony, we heard a variety of testimony here. We heard testimony of it's not possible to get it done or all the problems that are. We heard a variety of things of here's how we could do it. That's the way we problem solve, is we're going to have to work out those problems. And I think passing this bill is a way to get that going.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hansen. But my concern is that this isn't going to be a bottom-up thing. You know, you say we can work this out. My concern is that, you know, a few people, MPCA, maybe working with a few manufacturers, they're going to, quote, work this out. And this is going to be thrown on our small retailers in much of deep rural Minnesota who are going to have to deal with another state mandate when, quite frankly, in most of the part of the state that I represent, we don't have the issue with the landfills. And I appreciate the fact that we want to address that. One of the things that Brotex has on their stuff is they talk about waste to energy. Well, we've heard Bill in the Energy Committee or whatever, where we're going to go to the zero carbon stuff by 2050. Are we going to be able to burn this stuff 20, 30 years from now? According to what I heard in that testimony, we're not going to be able to do that. So I think we need to come up with more creative ways, but I'm glad that you mentioned paint, because that raises for me this question about, I'm not sure what the rush on this bill is through this committee, but in 2013, you mentioned that this basically exact same bill was heard in Environment Policy. It was heard in commercial or in Commerce. It went to Civil Law. Went to Judiciary, Finance and Policy, and then came back to Environmental Natural Resources, Finance and Agriculture Finance. And my question is this: you mentioned the paint stewardship. 115A.1415 is the paint stewardship program that's in the bill on page 1, line 1.9. And that has to do with trade secrets and so forth. And Mr. Eliff isn't here, but in the previous committee, I asked questions about how are you going to protect the trade secrets. And Ms. Peterson, who was here, talked about having a patented process. I don't see where there's protections here for those trade secrets. And if I'm missing it, can someone enlighten me on that?
Chair Hansen?
Can't enlighten him.
So,
Representative Fabian.
thank you, Madam Chair. So then why are you treating this differently from the paint bill that was done?
Madam Chair, Representative Fabian, I use paint as an example of an extended producer responsibility, as I did with electronics, where we provide direction and then the creativity comes from the industry. So we're not being prescriptive like paint, but we're saying that this is an extended producer responsibility like paint. We're not modeling it exactly like paint. And therefore, I use that, and if that has led us down the wrong path, I apologize. But what we're trying to do here is harness the creativity of the people who make the products so that we can use that responsibility for collecting the product back.
Are there other questions? Representative Backer?
Yes, Chair. When this bill came up this year, which stakeholders did you meet with?
Chair Hansen?
Madam Chair and Representative Backer, I introduced the bill based on the bill that was introduced in 13. I did not meet prior with stakeholders. I introduced the bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Fabian?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. You slipped away from me before I was. But the language is the same. And section 115A and point 1415 is the paint stewardship program, and that's what I see is in your bill.
Chair Hansen?
Madam Chair and Representative Fabian, but it does not prescribe that they would come to the same conclusions in how to implement that.
Well,
Representative Fabian?
thank you, Madam Chair. I just see some problems here. I think that this bill needs to go to civil law, to be heard there, the Judiciary, Finance. So I would like to amend your motion to send this bill to Judiciary, Finance, and the Civil Law Division.
Chair Hansen?
I would oppose the motion.
And so,
So Representative Fabian moves
Thank
to
you,
amend the
Madam Chair.
motion.
pardon me?
Representative Fabian moved to amend
Yes.
the motion.
I think that's the
and then
correct
I'll-
motion. I would move to amend Representative Hansen's motion and send this bill to Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Division. And I'd ask for a roll call. Okay. I'm
To
sorry.
Ways and Means with the recommendation.
I would make that motion to go to Ways and Means with a re-referral to the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Division.
All those in favor? Oh,
There was a roll
The
call, but
roll
can we
call?
speak on that?
Pardon me?
Can we speak on that?
yes, we can speak on the amendment.
Yeah, members, that seems to make sense because as we heard from the author and appreciate his candidness, we just pulled this bill out from 2013. We heard from stakeholders. My concern is the cost of the product that we're going to see. I mean, there's been some really good concerns brought by the testifier, but my biggest concern is a lot of things have changed since 2013. And we really need to bring in the stakeholders. We need to really look into it. Because if we want to do it right, we need to have that transparency instead of just put it through one committee. So I do support Representative Fabian's motion.
Representative Becker-Finn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, this is the second committee stop for this bill. We did hear this in Environment Policy.
Representative Hansen, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, things have changed since 2013. This bill was introduced on March 7th. It has been out there. We've heard it in a committee. You've even seen a stakeholder fly in from California to testify about how the program works there. So I think we've had testimony, and the choice before us is to make a choice. And I think this committee is the place to make the choice, and I would encourage a no vote on the motion to refer to the other committee.
See no.
Madam Chair, and then
Representative Fabian.
thank you, Madam Chair. Under 115, powers of the Pollution Control Agency, any data held by the Commissioner which consists of trade secret information as defined by Section 13.37, Subdivision 1, Clause B, or sales information shall be classified as private or non-public data as defined in Section 13.02. And Representative Hansen, I don't find anything in your bill that protects that information.
Assistant Commissioner Kudelka is coming down. If you'd please restate your name for the record, and if you could answer the question.
Madam Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is Kirk Kudelka. I'm Assistant Commissioner with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. To the issue of data privacy, you mentioned the already existing ability for the agency to declare things non-public information, and those categories being trade secrets and also the sales data. Those things are abilities the agency already has. We also have the ability where enterprises, whether it's this type of data or other types through the permitting process, can come into the agency and request information to be non-public data to protect trade mark processes or the other likes where there is a process for the agency to go through here, so that we have that ability, notwithstanding the bill, already to do that for any industry that comes before the agency to ask for that permission to have that data protected.
Representative Heinzman, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So earlier, we heard just briefly about a paint stewardship program or a paint stewardship bill. Mr. Kudelka, could you just confirm one way or the other if the language is different than the paint stewardship bill? I'm confused, and if you could kind of shed some light on that, that would help me out.
Assistant Commissioner Kudelka?
Madam Chair and committee members, I have not done a comparison. Many of the concepts are similar, but because it is carpet, there are likely some little different aspects to it. I have not done a comparison side by side.
Are there other questions? Representative Fabian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then on page 5, 5.22, conduct authorization, there's antitrust things there possibly that need to be considered, and should probably make a stop in the Commerce Committee too, like it did back in 2013-14 biennium.
Chair Hansen, any comments? No. Seeing no other questions, the clerk will take the roll.
Hanson.
No.
Claflin.
No.
Fabian.
Yes.
Backer.
Yes.
Becker Finn.
Nope.
Eklund.
No.
Fisher.
Nope.
Green.
Yep.
Heinzman.
Yes.
Lee.
No.
Lewick.
Yes.
Morrison. New. Purcell.
No.
Sandell.
No.
Sundin.
No.
Wagenius.
There are 5 ayes and 9 nays. The motion fails. Does not prevail. Representative Hansen, would you like to renew your motion?
I would renew my motion to lay this over for possible inclusion in Audubon's finance bill.
The bill is laid over.
Representative Lee, House File 167.